Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Catapult Your Career Success monthly web series. I'm your host, Linda Catalan, Executive and Career Acceleration Coach. And I'm really excited because today joining me is Cathy Sexton, who is speaking on the topic of the 5 productivity roadblocks. Now, some of you may remember Cathy from a few years ago when she was a guest speaker of mine, when she spoke on one of our telesummits, and she spoke on the topic of email overload. So I'm thrilled that Cathy has joined us today and is going to talk about the 5 productivity roadblocks. And specifically, you'll hear more about mindset, planning, prioritizing, energy, and focus. So I just know we're going to have a great session, just as we have in the past. But before we get started, I'd like to just tell you a little bit more about Cathy Sexton. So Cathy is a productivity and profit specialist, a speaker, an author, and a TV host, and a coach. And she works with highly driven, overworked, underpaid, stressedpreneurs, I love that word, and individuals to ignite productivity, increase profits, and accelerate results. Cathy uses her passion and empathetic nature to help people live healthy, productive lives. Why? Because she knows the health risks of being overworked. She lived it and paid a very high price for living that lifestyle. As a result, Cathy is committed to helping others reduce stress by gaining clarity and focus so they get more done in fewer hours and make more money. So let's get productive and let's get profitable. And thank you so much for being here, Cathy. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me.
So I'm going to jump right in with the questions, Cathy. And the first one that I really, I'm dying to ask is, how did you get into productivity and profitability coaching?
Well, that's a great question, and I'll try and keep the story as short as possible. I am an accountant by trade. That's what I did for many, many years. And I found myself in the corporate world, off and on sicknesses were starting to develop and, different things. And then I basically got rushed to the hospital because of very, very high blood pressure. And they thought something was wrong with my heart. They put me on a heart monitor, long story. But anyway, it came down to, I eventually was diagnosed, nothing wrong with my heart at that time, but diagnosed with Graves' disease, which is life-threatening. Takes your eyesight, affects your heart.
Wow.
And it's brought on and induced by stress. So at that point, after, the first kind of episode with the heart, now I really realized I had to change the way I was working. I had got to the point where I was coming in earlier, staying later and later, and, never seeming to get caught up. The company was expanding, and I just was taking on more and more. And I really realized, that my life and my family were much important than any job. Mm-hmm. And I need to really look. So it was about me just trying to work much better to be able to, did a lot of self improvement type things, and then got a coach and really just started looking at the way I was looking at life and looking at my work. So I left the corporate world and started my own business, and I get asked a lot when people hear that story and they go, but isn't owning your own business stressful? And I say, yes, it is, but it's my stress. It's not somebody else's putting things on me that I had no control over. So I have control over what I do, when I do it, and how I do it. And so that is a big difference. And so, so that's where it kind of all started from. And as soon as I started working with small business owners on their accounting, I realized they needed so much more help than accounting. They needed systems and processes put into place, and they were working way too hard and way too long for very little profit. And so that's kind of the profit is where my accounting background comes in. So I have a systematic system for them to make more profit and and handle their accounting, but then also we look at the work-life balance and then productivity systems processes to make their life easier.
Nice. Beautiful. And I noticed you used the term stressedpreneur. I really like that term. What does that term mean for you?
Well, interesting that how that came about is I'm creating this brand new online program, and I call myself a reforming workaholic. So people my age can relate to workaholic, but I realized after interviewing 20 small business owners, women at that point, was that not all of them related to that word. Even though they were overworked, overwhelmed, frustrated, working too many hours, all the same things that really I thought workaholism was, they didn't associate that with that word. So that's when I realized I needed to come up with something different that would trigger people without calling them a workaholic, because it's not really about, that you can't work hard and that you can't work, but there's a whole lot more to it. And that's where I just kind of created the word stresspreneur.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, as you said the word workaholic, because I consider myself a reformed workaholic as well, for having worked in the corporate world. And I think there's something about, when you think of the term workaholic, it implies almost that you get a high, or, that you thrive on the work. And the stresspreneur, the way you described it, it's almost like you're working out of not having a choice. So that's it. That's interesting. Very cool. So I'm sure all of this relates to productivity. So I'm going to ask you, what are some of the things that holds us back from being highly productive?
So as you had mentioned, I think there are really 5 areas. I'm sure there are others, but I with all the work that I've done, I really realized that there's kind of 5 areas that we can concentrate on. And the first one is mindset. It's really about our limiting beliefs. I mean, we all have a lot of beliefs, but the one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that our beliefs are only beliefs. They're not true. They're not false. They're just beliefs. But we take them as the Bible. We think we're not good enough, or we think we're not, that's too hard, whatever it is, that we realize that those are just things. I used to have a sign on my monitor, and I think maybe it came off when we were moving or whatever, but it said, it's not the truth. I just made it up. It's a lie, because we make things up. And if you just think about, when somebody maybe reacted to something and surprisingly to you, it really has nothing to do with you. It was probably all something that was going on with them that day, but we take it in and we start, what did I do? What all this is. And so we create these stories in our head that are not true. So when we're looking at, productivity, I have too much to do. And in a lot of cases, that's true. That needs to be taken care of. But the whole thing is, it is all manageable. And it's the way we look at it and the way we actually want to do differently. So it's not about what we can't do. It's what do we want to do going forward? And I think that's the mindset we need to look at versus, where we are and nothing can be different. And even if you work in the corporate world, even if you're somebody else is controlling your schedule, you have choices.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I'm just kind of curious. So when you're working with someone, so I don't know, you might want to get into the other roadblocks, or do you tackle each one of these separate in terms of what to do to avoid those mindset roadblocks?
So it depends on the person and what we're doing, but there are a lot of different ways. So for the audience, I would say the best thing you can do is, if you're trying to do something and you keep on failing at it, it's probably because of a limiting belief. And to be more aware of it, dig a little bit deeper, through that program I told you that I'm creating. That's when I've called myself a reforming workaholic for a long time. But when I started, working on it to share with other people, I really started digging inside and just saying, well, why was I that way? Why, what was it about that I felt like I had to do that? So it's really about us kind of digging a little bit deeper, and then really, most people will say something absolutely like, I can't do that, or I don't have enough time, or, whatever the term is. But when I challenge that and say, is that absolutely true? No, no give either way. Is it absolutely true? Most 99.99%, it's not true.
Yeah.
It's just something we've told ourselves. So being more aware of, we are aware of that stuff, that self-taught, that head trash, I like to call it head trash, that comes up, and we kind of just brush it aside. But if we start looking at it and start being more aware of those words and start dissecting them, it'll make a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. As you're talking, I was thinking of some of my own mindsets. Like I keep telling myself that I'm not good with technology. And I create all kinds of situations that proves me right over and over again. So yes, oftentimes we are kind of in our own way.
Yeah.
So yeah. So tell us more about,
okay.
Maybe this is a good time to get into some of the other roadblocks that you.
Yeah. So, well, I'll just tell you a little story on the mindset.
Yes, please do.
So, of course, through my coaching with other people, things have come up for me that I have learned about myself, right? And one of the ones that I realized was when I was young, I wanted to be a teacher. I mean, that was my dream job. My girlfriend had in her basement, she had desk, and we would play all summer. We would play school, and it was just, that's what my dream was when I grew up. It was to be a teacher. And one day I realized, and I thought back about the day that my mom came to a parent-teacher conference, and I can picture the teacher. I can picture my mom standing there and me sitting at the desk. And she says, it's so sad, Cathy will never be a teacher if she flunks history, because I was flunking history. Come to find out later on that I had dyslexia. I was dyslexic. So, so that was causing, and what is history but reading, right?
Yeah.
So I had a problem with reading, not that I didn't like the subject, but I probably didn't, but anyway. But I never realized what those words did for me. And not that my mother in any way was she trying to be harmful. She was concerned for me, because this is my goal. This is what I want to do. And if she can't, pass classes, she'll never make it, So it was her concern that she was, making. But I really believe that now when I look back, there were 3 different times in my life when I went to sign up for college, where, to be a teacher, that I put myself in a position and I never did it. And I really, truly, now that I look back, I really true it was that was in the back of my head, that something somebody else says to you, it can be as an adult, that we take on as truth.
Yes.
And it's not, So, and I finally became a teacher as an adult, teaching women how to sew and quilt, but that was kind of my start of all that. But, and now, I do productivity and all that stuff, but I think that's just kind of tells you how something that simple can really make an effect on our lives.
Yeah. Yeah. It's as you're sitting there talking about, there's so many mindset examples that I could bring into that just, I had this one client who had imposter syndrome, and basically had climbed the corporate ladder to a very significant, C-suite role, and always felt this, like he was an imposter. And, we kind of did the same exercise, dissected. It's funny that you brought up the dyslexia, because it came down to when he was a little boy, and came from an ethnic family, and the teacher had wanted to get him tested for reading disability, for
Right.
disability.
Well, that's what they called it back then.
That's what they called it back then. And his parents said, no way, like no way any son of my, there's no way my son has a disability. And so for years, he felt like his parents had somehow prevented him from realizing his full potential, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And, we did a reframe on it, and it's like, well, actually, if you turn it on its head and say your parents believed in you so much that they didn't want you to have a crutch, you wouldn't have achieved what you had if you were holding that as a crutch in your life. And just by doing the reframe, it kind of unlocked something for him, and like all those years back to when he was a kid. So the mind can play some amazing tricks on us. So yeah, absolutely, I can see all kinds of examples where that would be the case.
Yeah. Well, so the next roadblock is planning. We have a lot to do. We have a lot to get done. But I think a lot of times we lack planning. Even though we have a calendar and we have to-do lists and we have all that, we really don't truly do planning. And with some simple things that we can do. So number one, I believe anything that's 30 to 45 minutes or more, use 45 minutes or more, it needs to be on our calendar. It is an appointment. It might not be an appointment with someone else, but it's an appointment with ourselves. So that's one thing about planning. Another thing is making sure that everything is on our calendar that personally first. So are we taking care of ourselves? Are we doing exercise? Whatever those things are, I have a client who plays tennis 3 days a week, and, I got him to the point, because sometimes he just, I'm too busy. It's on your calendar. It's, slotted in there. You work around that. Vacations, things like that. You get all those personal things on your calendar, and then you can work around them. And then because that will help us from being overbooked. Because if we're just looking at a list.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, at the end of the day, take 15 minutes. At the most, it's only going to take you 5 to 15 minutes. You already know what you're working on. So just what's the most important thing I need to do tomorrow morning? And already have that ready for you. So when you come in the next morning, you don't have to stop and rethink, okay, what was I working on? What do I need to do today? You can save an hour the next morning by taking that 5 to 15 minutes the night before and just planning what are those 1, 2, no more than 3 things that have to get done today.
Yeah.
That's
really good.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, like, one of the habits that I had gotten into, because I agree with what you're saying at the end of the day being really important in terms of, I had gotten in the habit of actually writing those, 2 to 3 items, no more than 3 items, on a little sticky note, one on each sticky note, and literally putting them on my computer. So it's the first thing that I see in the morning when I get at my computer. And so it's like a constant reminder. And then as I complete them, I just take them off the computer. Just a simple structure that really helps me.
Yeah, that's perfect, because, it's really, it's in front of you. I tell people either put them on sticky notes, like you said, or put it on an index card, but keep it in front of you. So when you have all those interruptions during the day, you can weigh it. You can say, hey, is that more important than what I've already determined is most important? And because if we haven't, so really the next one is priority, is, in the roadblock. So we've got the planning, but then the next one is prioritization. So this, anybody can look at a to-do list, right?
Yeah.
And they can pick one task over another. That's the easy part. The hard part is determining what really truly needs to be done and what needs to be done today. So by putting them on the sticky note or putting them on a note card, it will help you. So when we get interrupted so much in so many different ways during the day, that if we haven't determined that, we haven't said, okay, these are the things that I'm going to do tomorrow or do today, then everybody else's things are more important than ours. Because they're anxious, they're upset, they need it. It's important to them, and it probably is very important. But is it important to you? And we take their urgency and we let it override what we have to do. So that's why it's really so important to prioritize and make sure, because we cannot prioritize or organize if it's in our head.
That's true.
We just cannot. And so, and then another part of the prioritization is, are they directly related to our goals or what we're supposed to be accomplishing? Because we can create a lot of stuff for us to do to keep us busy.
Yeah.
Or things I'd like to do, or yeah, maybe I should do. But really, is this directly related? And making sure you get those things out of the way before you take on the fluff stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm chuckling because it's funny. I had a discussion with my husband this morning because I work from home. He works in an office. So a lot of the stuff that needs to get done at home ends up on my to-do list at home. But he's had this hat that needs a new lining, and he asked me a year ago to go and get it relined. And so he was just commenting this morning on like how it's been a year and it still hasn't gotten done. And I said, yeah, because it's not a priority. It's not a priority for me.
Right. If it's a priority for you, it needs to go on your list, right?
That's right.
I love that. I love that.
That's great. I want to actually kind of go back first a bit before we go forward, because you were talking about planning, and then we got into priority. But you mentioned about making sure everything got into a calendar. Do you have like a suggestion or preferred way of calendaring? Like, is there sort of a kind of...
So I use Outlook myself, and you can do it with Google Calendar or whatever, but I color code.
Okay.
And I only use about 5 colors for them, 5 to 7 colors at the most, because otherwise it overtakes it and you can't. But, one for meetings, one for when I'm working on client stuff, one for personal. So I can, at a glance, I can see how much of my day is going towards a client, how much of my day is going to meetings or whatever that should be. So, or if I'm doing tasks, they're a different color. So I think that's, for me, I'm very visual. So for me, I can just look at my calendar and I can say, oh, here's, that's what I'm doing this week. Or I have a lot of open space, or not very often, but it helps me tremendously.
Okay. It's funny because I still, and I know a lot of people think I'm so old school, but I still go by a manual calendar, because I like to look at it at a glance.
Right.
And it just works for me.
Well, good thing you said that, because I've told people, if that works for you, keep it up. Why do you feel like you have to go electronic? Now, I was the same way for many years, up until probably 2.5 years ago. I kept both. So I'd have my, daily, and I could look at it, fill people in it, if I was out. I'm not out as much, so to me, it just transferred back into electronical. But if a paper calendar works, you can use colored pens, you can use, different things like that, or numbers and circle them if it's basically, if you want to use something to kind of keep it separated. But a paper calendar is fine if it works for you. Yeah. And that's what I'm truly about. I'm talking about natural productivity style is my whole thing. And what works for you, what works for me could be totally two different ends of the spectrum. And that's why, especially in the corporate world, when you have somebody that's micromanaging, all they're doing is hurting both people, because that person might not even work the same way this manager does, right? And so they're trying to force them to do something out of a non-natural way for them thinking and working. And so I think it's really important that we find what works for us.
Yeah, good. Okay, so we've talked about mindsets, we've talked about planning, we talked about prioritization. What's next?
So focus. So, I've even mentioned all the distractions and interruptions, a cluttered work area, habits that we're already in that no longer serve us. All of those affect our focus, right? One thing is multitasking, and, people, I think, are getting more and more aware that it's not a good thing, but it really true is not. You cannot do it. You cannot do it if it takes mental energy. Now, I can fix dinner, something that I've made 100 times, and not have to think about the recipe and have a conversation. That's totally different. But if I got a brand new recipe and I'm having to read the book and have a conversation, it's not going to work. Because when we have to use our brain to do a task, talking on the phone, trying to do email, that does not work. You're starting and stopping and starting and stopping and starting and stopping. And so think about a time that you were in the zone and really working hard, and you wind up getting, notification, you have email or phone rings or whatever, and you go away from that. It can take you from 17 to 21 minutes to get back to the same point of focus that you were when you got interrupted.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I had no idea. 17 to 21 minutes.
Huh?
17 to 21 minutes.
Yes, they say that's what they've done with the research. They said is 17 to 21 minutes to get back. And I assume it really depends on what you're working on, how mentally tasking it is. But it's all about our brain, and it's all about the energy that we're using, and when we're trying to focus on something. One of the things that I have found, a timer works great for people to help them, because if they know they're going to have a timer and alarm's going off, they don't have to worry about, okay, I got to stop in 15 minutes or half an hour to do something else. That tends to work. When I really, really want to focus, I use it's an app called Focus at Will, and it's a truly productivity app. And depending on your style, you can take a little quiz in there, and it will give you, like somebody with ADHD, it's very, they would listen to a different type of music than I would listen to. And a story around that, and I never realized that until I was at a workshop, and the gal next to me, who were really great friends now, at the time I had just met her, and they gave us an exercise to do, and he went over and turned on music, and just real soothing, some classical music or something, which I loved. And I thought she was going to jump out of her skin. I can't stand that. I can't, So, again, it's back to what works for us. But so that's why I kind of really like this music app, because, or any really music, if you know what works for you. And some music for nobody, for some people, they can't even go there. But finding what works for you. One other thing with focus, I think that is a really simple thing, is a lot of times we know there's something else we have to do when we get done with what we're doing, another project. So if you, and it goes back to the brain, so if you, write down or just say, okay, I will work on, and I'll just say, I'm going to work on a budget after I get done with, this project. Well, once I've told myself, I'm going to do that after I get done with this, it won't continue to bug me to say, oh, I gotta get done, because I gotta get that done. So it's a way of releasing and letting that, because our brain will try and constantly remind us of things. When we say, even just to take in a piece of paper and just say, okay, I'll do this later. Our brain does not know the difference between later right now, later in a minute, later today, later next week, later next year. It doesn't know. It just said later. You just told it later. So your subconscious is constantly trying to remind you that you said you were going to do that later. So by recognizing what you're going to do next, and I mean, that's not something you have to do every day, but you know, when you really have some time elements and some things, and you know you have to get both of these things done, and that one keeps eating at you, go, okay, I will complete that after 15 minutes of doing this, or when I'm done, or whatever that looks like. But by recognizing it, it allows our brain to settle and say, okay, we're going to get to that next. So I think that's been a really, really positive thing that people have been able to do.
Okay. Okay. That sounds really cool. Very cool. Okay. Focus at will. Yeah. All right. Good. And a timer is another good method.
Yes.
All right. Good. So we've talked about mindsets, planning, prioritization, focus, and is the fifth one then energy?
Yes, it is. Yes.
So tell me about energy.
So energy, it really impacts the ability for us to focus on what really matters. Okay. So they talk about prioritization, that, you know, fear is the number one reason for prioritization. And you know, who am I to dispel, you know, experts, but I truly believe energy is one of the biggest reasons. You know, either, you know, we might be stressed, we might be overwhelmed, you know, we're overworked. Our productivity suffers when we're in those states. If we haven't had a good night's sleep the night before and we're tired, that energy will cause us to procrastinate on things that we don't want to do, because we just can't get ourselves mentally ready because of the energy that it might take. So I kind of really feel like energy is one of the major causes for procrastination, along with, you know, along with just recognizing that we get to do things instead of have to do things.
Yeah.
You know, so, but I just think it's, you know, good sleep. And it's not really always the number of hours that you sleep, it's the quality of sleep that you get. And making sure that you're reducing your stress as much as you can. You know, that being overwhelmed and overworked are just things that are going to affect your energy. And I think there are 4 things that we have control over.
Okay.
And one is energy, our time, our money, and how we react or respond, or, you know, all of those kind of go into one, but they all affect everything else. They all affect each one of them. So if we have more energy, we can get more done. So we have more time, right? If we have more time, we can make more money. If we have more money, we can pay somebody to do, you know, so it's just constant. It just goes. So I think those are the things we need to concentrate when we're trying to control things, because energy is such a source of that.
Yeah, interesting when you talked about energy, when you're talking about energy, you're talking about like personal energy, and being like energized, so to speak. But like, from my perspective, there's also kind of an energy that's not necessarily within us, but around us, that gets impacted, that also affects our productivity. Can you speak more to that? Or
yeah, and you know, it can be because of our environment.
Yeah.
You know, if we're in a toxic environment around people will drain our energy. You know, if we have, you know, an issue with somebody, or we dislike somebody, they can take the energy that we have from us. And being aware of that, you know, our families can be a big part of that one for some people, right? And I think that's something that people really need to be aware of, you know, when they walk into the room and all of a sudden they feel like, oh my gosh, where'd my energy go? It's not really, you know, it's because you've been affected by what's going on around you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I sometimes sometimes what affects me, when it comes energetically, is like I'm going to say I'm a pretty organized individual, like 90% of the time. There's a few, I'm going to say, places that clutter tends to accumulate. I always think everybody has to have that junk drawer, right? But my office is one of those dumping grounds, unfortunately. And, it's kind of like one of those things where, okay, I'll put it away later, but just put it in my office for now. And so at times, you kind of don't notice the clutter until you do. And then all of a sudden, because you've been zapped of this energy, and so like there's been times where I've gone into my office, I don't even want to work there,
Right.
because it's gotten so cluttered, but I hadn't noticed it. And then all of a sudden I do notice it, and I went, wow, how did I let it get like this?
Mm-hmm.
And then I go on a major purge.
Yeah.
And it affects my productivity. Then it seems like all of a sudden then I get my productivity back.
I totally agree with you. So, and I talk about this when I talk about organizing a lot of times, is that when we put piles, or we have all this stuff on our desk, we don't see it. Other people see it, but we don't see it until it starts falling off, or like you said, it gets so much that all of a sudden you go, wow, where did this all come from? Or you stack up the mail on the kitchen counter, and then when it falls up, oh yeah, I got to clean this up. But we tend to not want to put things away because out of sight, out of mind.
Yes.
Right? But the opposite is true. In sight, in mind. So just like I said before, if I move something or put something in that stack,
yeah,
I'm saying I'll deal with this later. It's adding to that, is taking away from our focus because our mind's trying to constantly tell us. And that's why it's really important when you're working that you only have the project you're working on your desk. So that when you do get interrupted, you know where to go back. Otherwise we go, oh yeah, I forgot I got to do this. When you get this, because all these different things are calling at you all the time. So definitely from an energy standpoint and a focus standpoint, that's huge.
Well, it's interesting. You brought up an interesting point, because I find sometimes, sometimes you're your own distraction. So, you're in the middle of doing something and you're entrenched in it. And then you need a piece of information, and it's in your inbox, let's say, and you go to your inbox to look for that email. And meanwhile, something's come up in there and it's like, oh yeah, I need to do that. So now you're on to the next thing. And before you know it, you've done like 3 things away from what you were originally working on. Uh-huh. So how do you manage yourself through that process?
Yeah, so being organizing, having a place for things, and I'm not talking about being a neatnik, I'm talking about being organized so that you can find things when you need them. Yeah. Because we've lost their value if you can't find it when you need it, right?
Yeah.
And I think New York Times or something, or Wall Street one time, and this was many years ago, so I can't imagine what it is like now, but they say it was we spent 6 weeks a year looking for things, and that did not include the people that were helping us look for them. So, I think it's really about having a clear space, having things, if you have piles and stuff, get them out of sight, but having systems and putting in systems in place where you can find things when you need them. And, there used to be a program, I don't even know, it's probably still available, it's called Paper Tiger, but that's something where you file totally different. So you filed through keywords instead of, so they say insurance, so you might go, okay, what was that insurance guy's name that I made? Well, you could search insurance and it would pop everything where everything insurance was. And you can do it in an Excel spreadsheet, but it's really about having a way, another thing on insurance is car insurance. Do I file it under vehicle or auto or Buick or, there's so many, what was going on at the moment you filed it. And that's why keywords just work so much better, because at the time, we might think of one thing, and then when you're looking for it, you're looking at something totally different. So having a system that really works on all of our stuff really is huge.
Wow. Yeah. There's a lot there. Is there anything else that you think is critical that we need to consider when we're trying to be more productive?
Yes, I think especially if we're trying to change habits, if we're
Mm-hmm.
trying to implement something new, I think it's so important that we have accountability.
Hmm.
And we can say we can do our accountability we can be accountable for ourselves, right?
Yeah.
But we can also tell ourselves, oh, it's okay, you don't have to do that today, very easily,
Yeah.
right? So having, different, things. You can have a mastermind group. You could be part of an accountability group. You can have a coach, like you
Yeah.
or I. Having a friend who's, that you're kind of committing to. Making a commitment to someone else is different than making a commitment to ourselves.
Yeah.
Like I have a mastermind group. That group, they give me feedback and they challenge me on things that I'm going to do. My coach, they guide me, kind of keep me on track. I've got accountability group for the program I'm going through. So they keep me moving in the program. So, it's not that, but you can just pick one, but having somebody else that you're going to commit to and you're going to be accountable to, and they're going to call you on it if you're not, is probably the best thing that you could do to keep you productive and moving forward.
Yeah, hear you. I totally support what you're saying. It's so true. There's a line, nobody's ever gotten there without a coach.
Yeah, right.
It's so true. All right, so I just want to take a moment here. I want to let the audience know about the free gift that you're offering them. And it's a productivity self-assessment. And they can access this by going to your website. And the website is theproductivityexperts.com/self-assessment/. So again, that's theproductivityexperts.com/self-assessment/. So if you could, I'd love you to explain, because you actually have the free one, which is available for anybody that wants to take advantage of that. You've actually got 3 options on that. And I thought maybe you could just describe the 3 options for the audience.
Okay. So the first option is you just answer some some questions, and you, where you feel that how much they affect you, how little they affect you, that type of thing. So it's kind of more, that assessment is more to make you more aware of where you might need help. So you're kind of it's going to help you just by asking you the right questions, but then you're going to take it, and if you use it, you can say, okay, this is affecting me a lot. Maybe I need to work in that area. So that's kind of the self-assessment. The full assessment is it's also an online program, but it takes about 10 minutes to do. And it basically helps you understand more about yourself, and in 4 areas. So first area is how you make decisions. So do you make quick, fast decisions, or do you need a lot of information before you can make a decision and move forward? And nothing is right or wrong. It's the key to this assessment is knowing who you are truly as a person, and not what you think you should be or somebody else should think you should be. It's just telling you where you are so you know how to work within that. So I use it for helping people with their natural productivity style to make sure that they're working in a natural way. The second one, so the first one is decisions, second one is interaction. So how are we socially? Are we extrovert, introvert? And we can be anywhere in between the high and the low. The third one is standardization. So are we a real process person, or are we a person that's always chasing the next shiny thing that comes by? And understanding that, can help you. And then The fourth one is details and caution. So could we care less about all the details, or is every little detail, I'm so black and white that I can't move, you know those type of people. And some people could care less. They just worry about the outcome. They don't care about all the details. So it's just knowing where you are with that. And then when you're stressed, it'll also tell you that when you're under stress, what happens to those areas. So the more you can keep at your natural productivity style, you then can be less stressed, because it will allow you to recognize, okay, what do I need to do? For an example, if someone is very, very structured, real systematic, real, process oriented, follows things, and then when they get their report and then it drops really low when they're under stress, and people that I'm talking about are just going to know exactly what I mean, is all of a sudden things have gone, life's hit, and you can't get back to that structure. You're going in, you're just feeling like nothing's working. Well, that's when you stop and you go, okay, what has worked before, and get back to what's working, versus getting on the hamster wheel and just, because we get frantic because we're stressed, and not being aware. So it's really about that. And then the third one is that you can take the assessment, and it's like a 23-page document, so it's pretty involved. And then the third one is having me kind of have a consultation with the person, and really we can talk through it in a lot more depth. So
cool. Very cool. I did your free one just because I thought, if we're going to promote it to my audience, then I should at least, do it myself. And so what I found was really helpful, even just the questions that were asked, bring some self-awareness. So I thought that was really helpful. I scored 49, so I'm not really sure what that number means. 66%. And I got you are on the right track, but keep improving focus and organization. So maybe you could share with me, what is that, kind of on a high level, what does that mean?
So, that you probably, which you already said earlier, that you're fairly organized.
Yep.
Right? So, and people it's really interesting, the studies show people who are organized just want to be more organized, because they understand how helpful it is, right? Yep. And they can't work in the chaos.
True.
So that's why when you hit that level, you're on the right track. So, just continue doing what you're doing and try to find more ways to be better at what you're doing. So someone that really needs a lot of help that might score really low is, or high, I don't remember, then maybe you need to start looking at your systems, processes. Maybe you need help in, with, a coach or someone helping you, taking a class or some self-improvement books or something like that.
Okay, cool. Very cool. So just again, for the audience sake, that link is theproductivityexperts.com/self-assessment/. Now, Cathy, I also understand that you have a new book out called The Productivity Habit, a 10-week journal to become more productive. And it sounds super exciting. So for the audience, for the audience sakes, I'm just going to give them the link. It'll also be in the follow-up emails that they'll get. But it's theproductivityexperts.com/product/ and each word is hyphenated here. The productivity, so the -productivity -habit -a-10 -week -journal -to -become -more -productive. So the Productivity Habit, a 10-week journal to become more productive, with hyphens in between each of those words, /. But Cathy, I'm wondering if you could just share with the audience a little bit more about this book, and what would they get if they grab this book?
So the book is about the 5 roadblocks to productivity.
Okay.
So it goes in deep into each one. So what it is every day it'll have a scenario, an idea about, say, focus, and then we talk about, it's a little bit more self-awareness. It's not just a book, it's a real journal that you will, okay, look at yourself in this scenario or in this situation. How does that affect you? And then the second page is if you need to set some goals towards that, it will give you a platform to do that. And then throughout the book, once a week, it will give you some power habits, just a habit that you can start creating. So it's really totally a really different type of productivity book. It's really self-awareness, kind of like, you know, what you were just talking about with assessment, making you more aware, and versus just reading, okay, get a timer out and put this out there. It's really taking you much deeper than that to figure out what's working for you and what's not. And regarding the book, if they go to the productivity experts and go into the store, they can find the book. They don't.
Okay. Good, good. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, it sounds really cool. And actually, it's funny because I mean, the one of the reasons why I wanted to do this call with you today is I had just finished reading the book by James Clear, Atomic Habits. I don't know if you've read it.
Yeah, I've read it.
It's a really good book. And he made mention of a couple of things. And one of the things that stuck with me was repetition. The number of times you repeat a habit is the key to actually having it become a repeatable process. And so that's really key. So it's not the number of days necessarily, or it's just really repetition. You do it often enough that it does become a habit. The other thing that he mentioned in the book, which really stuck with me, was the threshold. So it's just like a learning curve where you do a habit, and you don't really see the benefits of the habit until you hit some invisible threshold, and it varies based on the habit. And then once you hit that threshold, then you feel like an overnight success.
Right.
Essentially, and so that's really cool as well. So I'm glad to see that your book really focuses around habits, because a lot of what you were talking about really is about, you know, creating some simple habits to be more successful. So you know, Cathy, just did you want to say anything more about that, or, you know, is that good?
Well, you know, the thing about habits is totally true. And I know everybody's heard 21 days. That is such the biggest false thing. And it was really it came from a book.
Yeah.
A long time ago. And it was really misinterpreted. The book did not really say that. And I'm sorry, I can't reference it off the top of my head.
Okay.
But it is about the repetition. And, you know, even if people will say it takes 90 days, it's not 90 days. It's about 90 days, you know.
Yeah, I'm doing it.
Right. It's about the continuation. If you do it one day and then don't do it for 2 weeks, well, you're kind of starting all over. Yeah. So it's really not the timeline. It's really the repetitiveness. You know, I definitely agree with that. And also about habits is making it, realizing that you're just replacing it with something else. You know, I'm just going to replace what I'm doing now with what I was doing. And thinking about it more of a replacement than, okay, I'm changing a new habit. And, you know, I just think, you know, it's the way we talk to ourselves. Yeah. I would, you know, it's, oh, I need to clean up my office because it's a mess. Well, you know, say things to yourself in a more positive way. And that is, I'd like a better environment to work in. You know, because the other way we just like, oh, do I really have to do? I don't want to do that. You know, but if we look at the positive things, and I think that all goes back to that mindset thing, but, you know, just, you know, look at the positive things, and, you know, and we get so down in ourselves. And again, like I think I mentioned before, it's really about, you know, we get to do this. Yeah. You and I get to do this. We get to go to work. There are people who can't go to work. You know, instead of I have to do things, and try to change that whole mindset, and that whole language can make a huge difference in everything and how we feel in life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Cathy, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you or visit your website, do you want to just share with the audience what's the best way to
Yeah,
get in touch with you?
theproductivityexperts.com. My email is Cathy with a C, C-A-T-H-Y @theproductivityexperts.com. I'm on Facebook. You can find me that way too. Or Productivity Experts is on Facebook, and LinkedIn, and all the rest of them, I think. So.
Okay, cool. Okay, well that's great. I mean, I think you summed it up beautifully. You did a great job with this topic. So, Cathy, I just want to really thank you for joining us today, for sharing your wealth of knowledge around productivity and sharing the productivity roadblocks and going into all the detail and around it. So, Cathy, do you have any last words that you want to share with the group before we end the call?
I think the only thing that I really want to say is, we are our worst enemies when it comes to productivity or really any bad thing, but we do have control and we can do whatever we want to do. It's just a matter of, do you want to do it? And what is it a priority to you? And because there's so many people I'll come across, they go, oh yeah, I need that, when they ask me what I do. And, and just by, okay, well, you probably do, but you're probably not going to do anything about it either, so, and that's fine. We all have our own choices, but to say I can't, or is a whole thing. We can do anything we want. And if we want to be better in another area, it's our choice.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So today we learned about the 5 productivity roadblocks: mindset, planning, prioritization, focus, and energy. And just a reminder again for the audience, you can take advantage of Cathy's free productivity self-assessment. It's available on her website, theproductivityexperts.com/self-assessment/. Also, I encourage you to check out her new book, The Productivity Habit, a 10-week journal to become more productive. You can find it on her website just by going to her store. Again, Cathy's website is theproductivityexperts.com. Cathy, thank you so much for providing some wonderful insight, and a special thank you to all the listeners for joining us today. Really appreciate it. This is Linda Catalan, Executive and Career Acceleration Coach with Cathy Sexton, the Productivity and Profitability Specialist, wishing you a wonderful day. Thank you so much.